I want to express some thank yous because the thank yous often get lost, buried at the back of the event. And it is no small thing to put on an event last year in the depths of the pandemic, but even now, especially during UN General Assembly Week. So first, I particularly want to thank the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, who are our partners in this dialogue, but also in this program. This dialogue is part of a larger Indian Ocean initiative that we have at Carnegie, directed by my colleague, Darshana Barua, who's a fellow at the Carnegie Endowment. It's a very vital partnership between Carnegie and Sasakawa. So to the president, Sunami-san, and to all of our colleagues there, thank you. I also want to thank my colleagues at Carnegie, as I said, Darshana Barua, who directs our Indian Ocean Initiative, Zainab Usman, who directs our Africa program, and then all of those who worked on this event, Alex Taylor, Catherine Hockman, Nitya Lab, Cliff, Jaya Pranata, Catherine Buchanan, Jessica Katz, Amy Mellon, Jocelyn Solly, Clarissa Guerrero, and Isabel Villegas. It's no small thing, as I said, to do this, so we appreciate all your work. Let me just make 3 quick points by way of introduction, and then I'm going to hand it to Sunami-san. First, if you look at the title of this event on the board there, it's called an Indo-Pacific Islands Dialogue, the operative words being Islands Dialogue. We're in New York City. We're in the heart of the United States of America. I pick up a newspaper or a magazine or I watch television and I hear about Indian Ocean or Pacific Islands, and 98% of the time, the story is not about the islands themselves. It's about the geopolitics and about the interests and the roles of the outside powers. From our vantage point, that is not the place to begin. And so that title, an Islands Dialogue, is chosen very deliberately because we think it's important to flip the script. For the people who live there, the central questions around growth, development, employment, upskilling, sustainability, opportunity, that is the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end of what really matters. And so for the next day and a half, you will hear us on this stage and with a variety of visitors really put the island stories at the center of this conversation. That's the way it should be, and that's the way we want it to be in this dialogue. Second, I'm not naive either. Geopolitics is a fact of life, and there are a variety of outside powers: the United States, China, India, Japan, Australia, France, some of them resident powers, the United States and France, for example, in the Pacific, France also in the Indian Ocean, actually, and they have interests too, and they're present, and we're not naive about that. But as I said, they do best in these regions when they don't forget that what really matters are the stories of the people that live there. I was very encouraged. I saw Wendy Sherman, the Deputy Secretary of State from the United States, has been in Hawaii, meeting with leaders from the Pacific who are on their way, some of them to New York. And if you look at what she said, she talked very much about an agenda that's central to them. She talked about development. She talked about innovation. She talked about upskilling and employment and growth. That's the right way to do it. And I think it's a kind of warning to these players that if they want to be relevant and if they want to speak to the needs and aspirations and goals of the countries in the region, they need to put, as we try to do, their stories at the center of this. The last thing I wanted to say is the agenda this year is a little bit different than the agenda last year because climate change is really front and center. There are a couple of panels that look at climate change from different angles, including from the angle of development finance. We often hear that climate is an existential issue from island nations, but we forget what that actually means. I worked on East Asia back in the 1990s when the Asian financial crisis happened. And Americans, people like me, people from the strategic class would run around East Asia and talk about security. And people in the region would say, well, what is it to talk about security when your entire economy has been blown away overnight? One could make the same case, I think, about questions around sustainability and the environment. What is it to talk about security? What is it to talk about geopolitics when these existential questions are really front and center? And so we've put a particular emphasis this year on climate issues, including finance and how to finance solutions to these, both on the supply side and on the demand side. And you'll hear that set of themes. So that's a long way of saying we think this is a really exciting program. It's part of an exciting larger program. I congratulate Darshana for doing this and for putting this program together, and to Sunami-san, who I'm going to hand the podium to. Again, thank you for your partnership, and we really look forward to the next day and a half. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Atsushi Sunami, the president of Sasakawa Peace Foundation, one of the co-organizer for this program. I just arrived New York in about an hour ago, and my luggage is somewhere else, so I forgot to wear my tie. But I guess it's more appropriate to talk about the South Pacific Islands and Indo Islands, and I'm really happy to see this second Indo-Pacific Island dialogue, as my colleague mentioned, that the importance of not only the geostrategic the dialogue, but also the climate changes, climate crisis, and others that are impacting the island states. And it is very important for us to have this sort of dialogue here in New York during the General Assembly of the United Nations. And our leaders are here to talk about precisely those important issues. In a way, for our foundation, Sasakawa Peace Foundation, had worked with quite extensively with the island states in South Pacific. And we had recently the visit by the president of Palau. After he became the president, he was the first official visit to Japan, and he had a very good meeting with our prime minister and our emperor, actually, and to address the importance of Japan's engagement and Japan's commitment to the future and the development of the South Pacific Island states. And our foundation has been really working very closely with the islands states in this region, not only talking about the climate crisis or the economic cooperations and of course coming out of the COVID. The most important thing is how we can really start to recover from this this COVID, as we have that they have suffered from tourism and other things that have been postponed for the last 3 years. But Darshana was really inspired our foundation in many ways, but one of the which I thought was there's islands in Indian Oceans, and the connectivity between islands in the Indian Oceans and the South Pacific Islands, and how the importance of engaging a dialogue of two parts that in Japan, and especially myself, that when we talk about the Pacific Island states, we are sort of looking down, for the historical reasons and others, to the countries like Marshall Islands, Palau, and, compact negotiations going on with the US and those. And then sort of leave the Indian Ocean sort of something very differently. But then she was really encouraged our foundation and our staff that the importance of looking at the role of islands in the Indian Oceans, and how engaging the dialogue with their experiences, their problems with directly with the South Pacific Island states will be something that we could do together on it. And of course, with the help of Carnegie, that we are able to create this dialogue. So I think this is going to be, I thought was great importance of the one of the programs that we do with the Carnegie. And unfortunately, last year, when we launched it, it was a COVID, and I couldn't come to the United States, and then we really started to open the dialogue myself. But then finally, this year, we were able to join you in person, and I'm really looking forward to this this dialogue. And I'm looking for 2 days, and we have now the former Minister of Justice, Minister Kamikawa, with us. We came together on the same flight, so we're about an hour ago, but to really kickstart this important dialogue for this year. So thank you very much. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Yoko Kamikawa, a member of the House of Representatives of the Liberal Democratic Party in Japan. Thank you for inviting me today to Ocean Nations, the second annual Indo-Pacific Islands Dialogue, hosted by Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the Sasakawa Foundation. On this occasion, I would like to take this opportunity to stress a few words on the importance of community, people, and gender equality in our efforts to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific. Japan's vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific aims to promote peace, stability, and prosperity across the region, to make the Indo-Pacific free and open as international public goods through ensuring rule-based international order, including the rule of law, freedom of navigation and overflight, peaceful settlement of disputes, and promotion of free trade. To this end, under the three pillars such as first, promotion and establishment of the rule of law, the freedom of navigation, free trade, etc. The second, pursuit of economic prosperity, and third, commitment for peace and stability. Japan is promoting development assistance, economic cooperation, maritime security cooperation, and so on. The Indo-Pacific region is critical to global peace, stability, and prosperity. And in its vast oceans, island peoples live with the sea as stewards of resources and the environment. However, in recent years, these people face many challenges, including threats from climate change, such as natural disasters and rising the sea levels, the impact of the global economy, infectious diseases such as the COVID-19, problems in securing food and safe drinking water, and improvement their livelihoods. And in addressing these challenges, the local people whose livelihoods are rooted in the communities need to be included in the activities, and the role of women in the community is particularly important. In other words, the stability and prosperity of the people of the island states is essential for the ability and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region, especially the participation of women in policy-making process and economic activities. Last but not least, I hope that this second Indo-Pacific Island Nations Dialogue will be fruitful in recognizing that women's participation and gender equality are important elements, not only in traditional security, but also in non-traditional security. I really happy to be here with you and discuss about the future of peace and security surrounding together with the sea, very, very fruitful nature resources, and also we live together. Peace. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zainab Usman. I'm the director of the Africa program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. It's really a pleasure to be back to this second edition of the Ocean Nation. It's always a mouthful. Ocean Nations and Indo-Pacific Islands Dialogue. it's so good to see how much this program and this initiative is growing, because it is very, very important. This is a region that sits at the intersection of a number of continents. And today, right now in this session, we're going to discuss the island nations that are both in Africa, but also in the Indo-Pacific. And we're going to hear from Madagascar why these nations matter. They matter to Africa, but they also matter to the Indo-Pacific in terms of trade, in terms of maritime security, in terms of climate change, in terms of economic development. And as we know, just this year, in the US, the administration of Joe Biden produced two very important strategic documents: the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for the Indo-Pacific, as the name implies, but also the US strategy towards sub-Saharan Africa. And for all of these strategic documents, the perspectives and experiences of countries like Madagascar matter. So I'm hoping that over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to get a better sense as to why the perspectives of countries like Madagascar, of course, and others like Mauritius, Seychelles, etc., matter on this front. And I have here with me today Miss Eva, Miss Eva Rajaonarison. She is a representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, specifically the Chief of Staff to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Madagascar. Before I introduce her to come up to the podium, I'm going to quickly explain how we're going to structure the next 20 minutes. Ms. Rajaonarison will speak for about 10 minutes. And then we're going to have a short discussion with her for another 10 minutes or so, maybe 5-7 minutes. And then we'll try to open up for maybe 1 or 2 questions, depending on the time that we have available. So please give a round of applause to the Chief of Staff, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Madagascar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Chair of, he's left. Okay, Mr. Vice Chair of Carnegie, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express the most sincere apologies of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Madagascar, who, because of another official commitment, is not able to be among us today. So sorry for this. I would like as well to express my gratitude to participate in this second annual Indo-Pacific Islands Dialogue to present the visions and the perspective of Madagascar on the theme of Africa in the ocean. Ladies and gentlemen, today the rest of the world turns to Africa and begins to see our potential. Therefore, it is our duty to better defend our interests and requirements. The geographical concept which translate the space from the coast of East Africa to the Eastern Pacific, illustrating a continuum between the Indian and Pacific Ocean, deserves a great attention in order to have a sustainable development of these areas. In addition to those strong vulnerabilities to environment and climatic challenges of the riparian countries, large CO2 emitters are located in this area, and yet island states like Madagascar are directly threatened by climate disruption. Therefore, Madagascar must take into account its geostrategic position with regards to security and defense issues in the Indo-Pacific. The process of strengthening cooperation in this area in terms of security and defense requires collective action to make joint analysis of the risk and threat that weigh on the referendum countries. Forums such as the one we are holding today constitute a preliminary step allowing all the referendum countries to proceed and to define common priorities in order to identify defense measures and action perspective to be implemented. The strengthening of cooperation in the Indo-Pacific is an opportunity to determine the guidelines and means useful for the implementation of each strategic component. From this perspective, it is essential that for Madagascar to maintain the stability and security of the zone through win-win cooperation, to protect Malagasy sovereignty and its underwater fisheries, minerals and oil resources in its economic exclusive zone, to strengthen cooperation in the maritime security, to promote the efforts already undertaken by the country to implement the challenge number 1 of the President of the Republic of Madagascar, which is peace and security a priority, protecting our borders and our natural resources. Among other things, the action of the Malagasy government in the ocean. This form of cooperation contributes not only to secure Madagascar maritime territory and natural resources, but also to improve Madagascar's position on the world stage as a country rich in biodiversity and as a transit country for 2 maritime routes. Ladies and gentlemen, Madagascar holds the presidency of the Indian Ocean Commission for 2022 and 2023 term. The maritime security is one of its priorities during this presidency. At the level of the IOC, Madagascar, with the members of the IOC, enters the first phase of the Maritime Security Program funded by the European Union and which has helped to support the current architecture of maritime security in the Indian Ocean and eastern and southern part of Africa. This program highlights priority actions in the framework of the governments as 2 MASE agreement, Maritime Security Agreement. These steps and perspective generate a renewed hope and confidence within the Malagasy population and especially as an island country, but also from our partners and to our ability to put an end to the paradox of a country blessed by nature and endowed with a strong potential, but which has nevertheless accumulated development gap. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all for me, and thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much for laying out very clearly what Madagascar's priorities are as an Indo-Pacific island nation. You did mention that your country has identified and has acknowledged climate vulnerabilities. And I wanted to pick up on that. As you know, one of the most devastating disasters we've seen this year is the floods in Pakistan. These floods have displaced over 33 million people. And indeed, this disaster has brought to the fore the importance of addressing climate change and how disruptive it could be, not just to countries like Pakistan, but all over the world. But your country too, Madagascar, has had its own fair share of experiences on this front.
Yes.
It is a country in which some experts have described it as experiencing the world's first climate-induced famine as a result of persistent droughts. So all this, I'm given all this context to ask you if you could give us a bit more information on what is the scale of the climate challenge in Madagascar.
Well, I'm sorry, I have to read my notes at the same time. Yes, we have, as all the islands in over the world, we have our own, we have all the same preoccupation of all the island about the climate change. So we faced droughts, famine, floods also because of the cyclone. And yes, it's a big challenge for us. And yes, I don't know if I answered your question. Yes, but we faced all those climate change threatened, and we have to face it with the partner who can help us. And Madagascar also is already take some action to against those climate change, like reforestation and help from the financial help for the famine and so on.
Yeah. So to follow up on that and to segue into a discussion on finance and support, what kinds of support from the international community, from Madagascar's partners, whether the major powers, whether the US or France or even Japan, we've had a former, does Madagascar need to address this climate challenge, but also some of the other things that you mentioned, that Madagascar is really prioritizing maritime security, the protection of its waters and fisheries and its natural resources. What kinds of support does your country need from its partners around the world?
Yes, it's most of all, maybe financial support and experience. You know, sharing how the country faced those kind of issues. So maybe to share and not very
Okay, great. Wonderful. I guess we can probably conclude now because I know we're running out of time. But maybe one final question, just in case you have any thoughts on this, and it's okay if you don't have any thoughts on it. We are approaching the climate summit COP27 in November this year. What does your country expect? What would you like to see from COP27? Or even stepping away from the specific climate summit, ideally, what would you like to see from multilateral fora? We are here on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. What ideally would you like to see from these multilateral forums in terms of effective action for countries like Madagascar and other island nations?
Okay. First of all, we are very happy that the next COP27 will be held in Africa. It's the first time. And Madagascar is, how we say, respect their commitment during the COP27. And yes, we have, you know, how is it? Yeah, we like the other country, African country, to respect their commitments, to finance the adaptation of the process of the climate change. Yes, climate change.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. A round of applause, please.